Howdy everybody, welcome back here to the video. So, the PlayStation Showcase, wrapped up about a week ago. Now the dust is finally settled, I want to talk about Spider-Man 2, as it's a game I'm excited for when it comes to PC, within the next 18 months like I predicted. Like, I think it will, but anyway, get back to the topic at hand. People are kind of saying that the game looks downgraded, and I'm confused by that. There's going to show the original trailer from 2 years ago at this point because it was shown running on PS5. So this ain't gameplay, it's what you would call in-engine footage. Because let's be real here, a lot of in-engine footage just shows like what the engine is capable of running. Doesn't mean that actual gameplay, where it'll look exactly the same as it did. But it was running on the PlayStation 5 system. That's one thing I gotta give Sony credit because they usually show, when they show games, they usually have them running on the actual system, something Microsoft should do. But anyway, so if anyone's wondering kind of what the creative director at Insomniac, because someone asked him a question about this whole thing, and here's what he had to say. Someone wrote, at James Stevenson, question, is the latest Spider-Man 2 gameplay footage the final build of the game? And here's what he wrote. With a simple GIF? No. Dun da da, dun da da. But why would people think that otherwise? It's common sense. Like for, I don't know, a game that's still in development to show footage of a build that's not the final version that'll ship with the game. Gee, I guess people somehow forget about that, or they have pretty short-term memory. I don't know, but come on, people, common sense. But anyway, Digital Foundry did their own analysis based on the, what was it, like 12-minute gameplay footage we got last week. So I split it into three parts, like where they divided into sections. Thank you, Digital Foundry, for that. You made my life easier with that. But anyway, so the first part is where they go over some of the noticeable assets, upgrades, and other things that they've noticed from the get-go. So, here we go.
The Spider-Man 2 trailer contains a lot of detail about the game's visuals, despite its breakneck pace. So we're going to go through the entire trailer with a forensic lens, and try to work out exactly where the game is at from a technical perspective. I'll be using slow motion and zooms here pretty liberally to better analyze this fast-paced footage. The most obvious visual improvement comes down to the building rendering. The Spider-Man titles on last-gen consoles were strictly bound by the constraints of the PS4's hard drive and CPU. To stream in New York City at a rapid enough clip for the game's blistering web-slinging traversal, which peaked at an astonishing 32 meters per second, certain concessions had to be made. Buildings were made up with relatively simple, tiled textures, and had a lot of repeated bits of detail. From a distance and at high speeds, the world looked perfectly good. But if you stopped for a few moments and took in some of the architecture at close range, the concessions were obvious. This was also true in Spider-Man Miles Morales, and the two games' PS5 editions seem to use the same basic geometry and texture layouts as the PS4 versions. A lot of the trailer takes place in new regions of New York City that weren't present in the first two titles, but there is a short sequence where we can get a pretty good comparison going. Just take a look at the building details here. The structure on the right gets more varied texture work, with grime and a smoother brick pattern, alongside different looking windows and added vents. The brown building in the distance is totally overhauled, with rounded off edges and broad, wide-set windows. As we continue through this swinging section, we see more heavily updated assets. The old alleyway is now decorated with an archway and market stalls, for instance. Large, detailed murals adorn the building exteriors. And of course, a lot of the building assets have been tweaked or upgraded, with balconies and other structural features added. Some of the buildings seem to have been swapped out entirely as well. At the end of this sequence, we see the Harlem Seafood Market area, which is totally absent from the prior games. It seems like Insomniac has carried over their work from 2018's Spider-Man and have made extensive reuse of the world from that game, but a lot of effort has clearly gone into adding additional detail to suit the capabilities of the PlayStation 5. It's not a top-to-bottom makeover, but it does make a difference, especially when evaluated from close range. There's another area where Insomniac seems to have pushed out the visual bar considerably: water rendering. The original Spider-Man titles had acceptable enough water with a smoothly undulating surface crisscrossed with normal maps. Very little gameplay in those titles actually took place on or near the water, so it was mostly just acceptable looking background dressing. At close distances there were obvious flaws, and it wasn't incredibly detailed or especially interactive, but it looked good enough, I would say. Spider-Man 2 has greatly improved the water simulation. Water has greater geometric density and doesn't depend as much on normal maps for detail. When characters make contact with its surface, there's a lot of spray as well as some deformation of the water surface, which is especially obvious in this scene. It's interactive in a way that we simply didn't see in the prior titles, which suits this high-speed chase sequence quite nicely. The water's surface also generally appears glossier and more true to life than what we saw before. This mostly comes down to the reflections, which this time seem to be handled using ray tracing. The clearest giveaway here is the way the reflections cohere over a few frames after a camera cut, as more rays are shot out and denoised. Prior Spider-Man titles relied on screen-spaced reflections for larger bodies of water, even on PS5, so this is a definite upgrade. The new reflections do have this sort of chopped up look that you tend to see on uneven water surfaces, but they consistently reflect the environment and don't suffer from.
So yeah, there was definitely some noticeable upgrades that we have seen, such as, the new regions like Queens, the river and all that. So there was some good upgrades there. Some of the abilities got majorly upgraded or just tweaked. As you've seen before, obviously Insomniac carried over most of their work from the previous games in the franchise over to Spider-Man 2. It's a sequel, so and it's New York. I don't know why people were expecting a different map, which is kind of weird. That's like saying that Tears of the Kingdom should have a completely new different map from Breath of the Wild when it's a sequel to that game, much like Spider-Man 2 is the sequel to both Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018 and Miles Morales. So it's very confusing, but despite all that, it's not a top to bottom up makeover, but you can tell that there are changes within the map. So such as the added areas like I mentioned before. Obviously, let's talk about the water, because that was definitely one that people like myself thought it was the weakest part of it visually, but I didn't know that it was ray tracing enabled. That was kind of a surprise, because I guess it would kind of make sense why some of the servers look uneven, as Oliver from Digital Foundry noted. So it kind of makes sense, but because it seemed to have, a choppy look on uneven surfaces, But obviously, spray and deformation, if I could talk, on surface reflections. So just in general, even though the game kind of looks like, the remaster and Miles Morales, it still has some upgrades that are just much easier to tell when it's shown right in, up close to you. But, so now we're going to get to part 2, which they kind of discussed briefly. I would say the biggest change, gameplay-wise.
Perhaps the most game-changing technical boost comes down to the ability to swap between Peter Parker and Miles Morales, the two titular Spider-Men of the prior titles, seemingly on the fly. We see this occur once in the trailer during a scripted mission. From the looks of things, this seems to be a real-time swap between both locations, without the use of video files or other tricks. It's not clear if this will be toggleable anytime, or if it's limited to certain key spots during the main story. Insomniac's commentary on the PlayStation blog at least confirms the latter, but it would be interesting if it was accessible during general gameplay as well. In any case, swapping between locations essentially instantly is a neat trick, reminiscent of Insomniac's work on Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and wouldn't be possible on a last-gen console.
So there you have it. Yeah, I would say that is definitely arguably the biggest, gameplay change from what we've seen so far, which is the ability to switch real-time, seemingly, between both Peter and Miles. And seeming like Insomniac seems to hint at, it seems to be only for, specific story moments. But I guess maybe that would explain why they didn't opt for co-op with this game, because I still feel this way, that it is a missed opportunity, especially when it comes to, say co-op was in the game, and it was crossplay between PlayStation 5 and the inevitable PC version, that would have been amazing. Crossplay co-op. Oh, such a missed opportunity, Insomniac. I still hold by that to this day, but it's really cool though that it's seemingly real time. It doesn't use any video files, some sort of trickery. It's real time, so probably something that wouldn't have been done on on the PlayStation 4. I know you could do it in like GTA 5, but also 360 games. So, but then again, Rockstar are insane when it comes to what they're able to pull on freaking old hardware. So it's kind of very impressive nonetheless. So now finally, Digital Foundry goes over other things that they have actually noticed in the gameplay footage
on a last-gen console. But outside of the aforementioned improvements, spotting clear visual boosts is a bit tricky. There's clearly a lot of visual continuity between Insomniac's Spider-Man games. Environmental reflections, for instance, are still handled using RT, at least in the 30 FPS mode that was used for the demo. It's still impressive stuff, but we've obviously seen that before from the studio. Shadows are reasonably detailed, but the RT shadows from the Spider-Man PC releases don't seem to have made the jump over to consoles for this game. They have the uniform appearance that is characteristic of rasterized shadows, and the game does struggle slightly with fine geometric features at times. The characters are expressive, with bold designs and plenty of detail, although this was also true of the prior games, without obvious technical advances here. Lighting does seem like an area where we might see some evolution from the last game's probe-based GI system, which to be fair did look quite convincing. Now Spider-Man 2 is delivering high quality results, but it's hard to judge from this limited sample if much has changed. Environmental detail within interior spaces does look pleasing, with a lot of scattered objects in the fish market area, but it's challenging to draw a direct comparison. The scale and speed of the chase sequence is truly top-notch stuff, but the prior games also featured high-octane action scenes. Everything else that we can see, from animation to world lighting to draw distances, it's all very refined and seems perfectly pleasing, especially when the world is flying by at 100 kilometers an hour. But that speed does make it hard to make sense of potential upgrades. So visually speaking, from what we've seen so far, Spider-Man 2 seems mostly like an iterative upgrade over the prior games. Insomniac's excellent-looking 2018 Spider-Man rendition seems to have served as a base for this title, with upgrades to take advantage of the much faster PS5 hardware. Granted, we're only seeing a very small slice of what is sure to be a content-rich experience, but that's my impression from the footage that we've seen thus far. There is one small visual issue that's worth noting as well. Towards the end of the chase sequence, the sun visibly scrolls to the right before disappearing out of view, before returning to its prior position off-screen a few moments later. I suspect this may be demo-specific scripting or simply a change that's meant to trigger off-screen, but in any case, I don't think this will be an issue in the final game. Outside of that one minor issue, the showcase footage does look very polished. Despite the fact that all we have is a streaming version of this footage, it's possible in a few select spots to count out fairly clean pixel edges. I counted results between 1296p and 1872p across a handful of shots, suggesting perhaps a dynamic 4K setup, just like we saw in the fidelity modes available on the existing PS5 Spider-Man titles. Though it's not labeled, this footage presumably comes from a similar mode option, a 30 FPS mode targeting high resolutions with ray tracing enabled. Beyond all the technical minutiae, I'm impressed with the Spider-Man 2 trailer. And a large part of that is that Insomniac has expanded Peter Parker's abilities for this entry. Playing Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales back to back, you definitely get the impression that the flashier combat in Miles Morales holds up better. And it seems like Peter Parker's new symbiote suit should bring the two characters up to par in terms of combat pacing. The symbiote powers look very tactile and satisfying, and each combat move is well animated. We also see new context-sensitive gameplay options, like the ability to fling Spider-Man forward at high speeds in select spots, to wrap up multiple enemies at a time while perched, and to take down enemy vehicles. Some of the higher speed maneuvers probably wouldn't have been easy to achieve on the PS4 either, given how hard that system was pushed to stream in assets. The core gameplay doesn't seem all that different. It's still a brawler built around making successive hits while dodging incoming fire and building towards special moves and powers, but Insomniac has filled out the arsenal a bit.
And there you have it. So yeah, dynamic 4K at 30 FPS with ray tracing on the console. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's not surprising. I mean, we're talking about an open world game on a PS5 only game. So yeah, that kind of makes perfect sense to me. Now the sun scrolls to the right during chase scene. Yeah, I kind of hope that's not in the final game. It would be kind of weird if it is, but like Digital Foundry said, it likely won't be. But I guess time will tell. And you can definitely tell that the characters are expressive, like Craven here in this scene for a minute before it's going to transition over to, the actual gameplay that we saw. Yeah, reflection using ray tracing, at least in 30 FPS. Yeah, that's not surprising, but for the PlayStation 5 owners who are expecting ray tracing shadows like the PC version of the first Game of Miles, yeah, you're gonna be disappointed a little bit. It seems that's gonna be still a PC only thing. It seems like, but yeah, so seems like the game could struggle to find geometric features at times. I guess just based on the trailer footage that we have. So that's the only we can really go off of. Now, it's hard to tell just based on, the limited amount of footage we have. Is that the lighting changed, all that drastically? I guess time will tell in the final game. And like the creative director of Somniac said, this ain't even the final version of the game. And it looks this good, so it's gonna be interesting to see. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna look really crazy on PC, man. In a year or two, when that port comes over, it's gonna be wild, bro. It's gonna be nuts. But so yep, dynamic 4K. Probably dynamic 4K 30. Now if there's 60 FPS mode, which I would assume it is, it's probably on a upgraded version of the engine that Somniac was using probably for their previous titles. So we'll see what happens though. But hopefully, 60 FPS honestly should be a standard by now. It really should be. So all in all, very impressive trailer. Thanks to the flashy new gameplay that we've seen, especially with the symbiote and everything else. And add a context where you can fling Spider-Man like where you can like get across the city like much faster compared to the previous two games. Like you can wrap up multiple targets while you're perched, and also use that to take down vehicles, which the core gameplay isn't too different. I mean, it's a sequel, so I don't know what people were expecting too much. Don't know why. I think people had their expectations raised too high just based off of that quote unquote in-engine trailer that we got 2 years ago. So no, the visuals are not downgraded. At least I don't think so. But it's really weird that people think that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the day of time it is in the game, based on where the demo is. But still, though, the game still has a couple months before it comes out. So whenever the game looks better for us, we'll have to wait and see. But on all, this ain't the final version of the game, so I don't know why people are saying it's downgraded. I think the game looks fantastic, in my humble opinion. And I'm saying this as someone who doesn't have a platform it's coming out on this year. And whether you think I'm right or wrong, that's totally up to you. But I personally think the game looks fantastic, like I said before. And it's looking to be a great game. Insomniac is definitely going to kill it because they know their thing. When it comes to, they definitely know how to do, a Marvel game, as they have done with both 2018 and Miles Morales. And it's going to be a really good game. So, is it anything groundbreaking? No. But as long as the game is good, it looks great. As long as the game, performs well, not buggy or anything like that. Honestly, that's a win in my book for PlayStation fans who are looking forward to this game and the inevitable PC port for PC players like myself, where I'm going to get the game on in a couple of years. So, I don't know if Insomniac can nail everything. They got a pretty huge game on their hands. So, and based on their previous entries, it's in good hands. I assure you, I think it's going to live up to why people are excited for it. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this topic. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think the game is downgraded, or does it even look better than the previous two entries? I think it looks better. And like Digital Foundry said, it looks like a iterative upgrade, and that's not a bad thing at all. So, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, have a good one.